I am here with renowned, I'm saying renowned, I told you I was going to say it, renowned athletic trainer or trainer slash movement specialist Aaron Alexander. He's a published author, which is nuts. Everyone loves a good book.
Yeah.
He hosts a Align podcast,
Yeah.
which lines up with your book, Align.
Works out.
And has been through some crazy stuff in the last, 12 months, would you say, with a certain Aaron Rodgers of the New York Jets. Hired as a movement specialist to kind of retool, get ready for an upcoming season, turned extreme pivot, would you say?
Pretty extreme pivot.
Pretty extreme pivot with an Achilles injury that usually is a kind of a career sentence from time to time. It's put a lot of good athletes down.
Yeah.
So I guess give a little background on yourself and kind of run through how we got to that situation, and we'll go from there.
Background is, started off doing physical training. So started that about 20 years ago. I was just obsessive with mainly like bodybuilding, getting people jacked, myself as jacked as I could. A lot of insecurity, trying to mask insecurity with jackness, very common. And then a lot of muscular imbalances, also very common, led to injuries, chronic pain, things of the sort. And then that transitioned more into exploring body work and manual therapy and understanding how to put the parts back together. And then also that eventually led into more focus on corrective exercise, again, putting the pieces back together. And then started the podcast about 10 years ago, which gave me a great opportunity to be able to connect with, the greatest minds on the planet around training and wellness and health, and kind of a lot of frontier thinking around how to body better, how to be healthier, than what the norm is. And then did the book about 4 years ago, and then got in contact with, like you mentioned, Aaron, about maybe a year and a half ago or so. And then we had, done some things together, did some sessions together, and then he was on the fence of whether he was going to go and do another season. He went and did the darkness retreat. I had actually done a darkness retreat at the same place, maybe like 5 months or so before that. And so it was he's in that reflective moment of what he's going to do, and decided to go with the Jets. And then so he was kind enough to invite me on, and his the title was performance director, but trainer, body worker, and then also working on supplementation and nutrition and general lifestyle stuff, which incorporated a lot of different gadgets and equipment and just general lifestyle changes as well.
Sweet. So the season opener hits. You've obviously been working on betterment of movement, lifestyle, nutrition, everything else. We've all seen the iconic, he runs out with the American flag, opening game, big crowd in New York, and then 2-3 plays later? Four snaps later, the unthinkable happens. So when you get to that juncture, obviously let the medical team do the diagnoses first, but after that, what's going through your mind, and then how did you guys approach that? What are we doing here?
He was at first really, feeling pretty down about it, obviously, and was very much in a reflective place of I'm probably not gonna play again, and it's probably over. And then thankfully the next day he woke up in the morning and kind of gathered everybody. He was made the decision to play, and his mind had shifted overnight, which is really great. And so then it was okay, all systems go towards doing everything that we possibly can to expedite tissue healing, is beyond what would be considered normal, with the goal being that he would hypothetically, hopefully, be able to play at the end of the season if the Jets were able to make it to the Super Bowl. So there was and we were successful with it, which was great. And it was really coming down to whether they could beat the Dolphins. It was a couple games before playoffs, few games before playoffs, and then they of course lost to the Dolphins. So then it was not going to be a thing. But I'm really proud of him for maintaining that mindset, willingness to be, willing to potentially put himself at risk to do that, but also putting in so much work throughout the season, during the actual normal season. But he obviously wasn't playing, but putting so much work every single day into like pretty much full-time rehab to be able to get himself to a point where there was the available option to be able to do that, which is pretty unheard of in sports and in the rehab world, which is exciting.
It's like I was telling you, it's usually what, a 15-month. Like
Yeah.
on a good day, like, you know, or on a normal timeline, conservative is about 12 to 15 months of recovery.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, it would be like definitely like a season ender.
Yeah,
sure.
Season ender, and lucky
like
if
a
you
guaranteed season ender.
And lucky if you get to next season, like training camp or ready to go. Like usually it's probably into that season. So when this happens, you clearly you're pivoting from just working on movement to, like you said, researching every modality, every method, things that help tissue recovery. Did it start as a, like, let's take a huge collection of things and like narrow down, or when did you guys kind of understand that process was like, okay, these things are starting to click, like what we're doing is starting to really work here?
Well, the first fundamental part of supporting any form of healing is like the baseline fundamentals is, are you sleeping well? Are you doing everything you can to optimize your sleep? Are you decongesting well or circulating well? So if you are stagnating the tissue, then that's going to be stifling healing more than anything. Are you happy? You know, are you able to actually like maintain motivation, maintain a playful attitude, maintain a parasympathetic tone within your nervous system, so you're like calm, you can rest and you can digest? Because if your body is under a state of like panic and fight, flight, and all of that, it's not going to be able to prioritize healing of an injury. It's going to be more thinking about like, how do we get you out of the room? So like the fundamental things those are just like non-negotiable, perennial. That's the way that it is. It's a part of being human. And then stacking on top of that, then it's like, okay, reaching out and thinking of, reaching out to all the resources in my network that I have developed over the last, my whole life in like the fitness business, but also specifically the last 10 years with the podcast. So that's been a really cool opportunity to be able to expand my network and to be able to reach out to pretty much everybody, which is cool. And finding out through various different folks of like, what would be the top, 5, 6 tools, devices, hacks, like what do we have access to? So you start off with kind of a broader list of maybe like 10 things or so, because you can't ultimately do everything.
Yeah.
And it's also doing things in stages as well. And then through kind of like cross-referencing various different people, doing a ton of different research on various different things, finally you start to kind of whittle it down into, okay, these are the things that we're going to, this is like the staple things that have been used in physical therapy and been used in athletic training and all that stuff forever. And now here's a little bit of like the wild, wild west frontier type space that we're going to kind of like titrate, drip a little bit of that into the system. And then, a couple months in, then we start kind of building like an actual consistent plan of things. But the point of injury, that was the point where it was like just a massive reconnaissance mission, where it was pretty much like 12 hours a day, just on calls with people, doing research and aggregating as much information as humanly possible on how we could go beyond what would be considered normal for healing.
Which obviously has now broken the concept of like, this isn't a long, the things are possible if done right. And obviously you and I have talked at length about this. A lot of organizations are kind of inside the box in terms of like, we have protocols, we have things, but there are like you said, there are a lot of other tools like the one sitting next to you that you can reach out. There are easy adds to really increase, tissue recovery and be that guided hand. So walk us a little bit through, outside of just the Aaron situation. We have, you are given a few talks on, movement and how to heal or expedite recovery naturally.
Yeah.
Kind of walk us through, like, what are some of those top modalities? How do you use them? And what are some things like teams, organizations can be cognizant of with their athletes that, might help, one, either prevent these kind of easy things from happening, or two, God forbid they happen, you're able to put a plan in action and have the tools to be successful in that recovery.
Yeah. So another thing, it's important to note that he had a a surgery called a speed bridge, which allows him to get back into movement quicker. And I think that's like the most important thing. But he's not like the first person to ever have a speed bridge. Like it's been done lots and lots of times. So it still doesn't take away from the speed in which he recovered. It was still like very impressive and an oddity, irregular. But that's the most important thing is getting a person back into being able to move as fast as possible. And so the idea that you get an injury and then you just go into like stasis and just allow the body to just figure itself out for the next, extended period of time, you want to get the body circulating and moving and innervating and activating as soon as possible. And so ways that we were doing that in the beginning, and this is something I would do, with anybody, would be like using e-stim. So there's various different, the device I was using is called a Newbie from NewFit, and it uses direct current instead of alternating current. It's kind of like Cadillac of e-stim. And so we were using that to be actually manually stimulating his muscles around the calf and the quad and hamstrings and foot and just maintaining action. So the way that you're able to actually circulate lymphatic fluid and all like the byproducts of healing and inflammation, all that stuff, is through muscular contraction. If you stop muscular contraction and you're damming everything up, that's one of the issues of why like the Rice principle got switched. Dr. Merkin himself, who like founded it, is like, oh, sorry, my bad. Like ice is not the way for acute injuries or injuries in general. Full body global ice, great. Like cold thermogenesis, awesome. Ideally contrast therapy. But when you're just icing a specific joint, you could end up actually stifling the healing process because you're closing up those cells that want to be able to circulate. And inflammation is actually a very healthy, warranted response. And so if you're shutting that down, you could end up kind of creating like a backup. And so a more effective strategy would be compression and movement and elevation, but movement is that's the main key. And so starting off, making sure that we're moving, using e-stim was a really valuable approach with that. Also doing blood flow restriction was something that we were doing as well. So you use little cuffs. The company's using is called Katsu. They're awesome. They're like the OG BFR company. So you put cuffs around the hips, around the shoulders, and then that causes the body to hold more of a pump in the legs or the arms. And so it's sending the signal to the body that you are actually working harder than it is. And so you could be sitting down pretty immobilized and just be doing muscular contractions with BFR, and you're still engorging all those blood vessels with blood. And so the signal that ends up sending is, oh my God, we're working pretty hard. We need to start producing these growth factors and various different compounds to be able to heal. And so that was something that we'd be doing with regularity. We were using red light therapy, as you know. So that was something that I'd be wrapping the Achilles / other parts as well. But pretty much most times throughout the day, maybe not most, probably at least for a couple of few hours a day, pretty much any time he was like laying down, or anybody, if I have an injury, same thing, I would wrap the red light around the Achilles, and that's really supportive, as you already know, for stimulating mitochondrial health, stimulating, and then eventually creating ATP, which is like the energy currency of the cells. If you have adequate ATP, if you have adequate energy, then you're able to the cells are able to function. If they're able to function, then they're able to heal. And it's also helpful with pain reduction. It's also helpful with circulation. It's also helpful with so many different things. It's like helpful with collagen synthesis. It's helpful with hair growth. It's helpful with, I've seen research around thyroid function. Like there's so many different things. It's because we run on sun. Like we're sun creatures, and so it's so important. The foundation with it is not to just lean on technology. Technology is an add-on. But like the foundational technology is nature. And so you're replicating what you're getting, those healing frequencies that you would get when you wake up and watch the sunrise, or when you go out and watch the sunset. So that's what we're replicating, and we're taking the beneficial aspects of what you would be getting naturally from the sun, which I find it probably hard to beat the sun, but you're taking those natural frequencies you're getting from the sun, and now you're saying, cool, let's take those specific frequencies and bring those into the rest of the day. If a person's sitting in a rehab place, if a person's sitting in a hospital, which is like one of the most unhealthy places you possibly can be, it's great that we have access to technology that can kind of capture nature and recapitulate it in this form of red light therapy. So that was something we were doing super, super regularly, and I think that was incredibly helpful. We were doing pulsed electromagnetic frequencies using a company called, that company was called Pulse. And that's really helpful it's been used there's like thousands of research studies on it, but it's really supportive with bone growth in particular. So regenerating tissue. It's helpful with the function of the cell membranes to allow fluid in and out, so it's able to like circulate more effectively. We're using so many different things. I mean, I can just go on, like, there's literally like a lot more things that we did, but that was kind of a baseline starting point of some of the stuff that we did. And then it was like a lot of, so every day it was body work, manual therapy, and then I'll shut up. But thinking of the body like a river system, is kind of pretty much what it is. And you want to make sure that if you have an injury, particularly if you have like a distal injury, like away from the torso, such as the foot, it's so crucially important that you are getting as much circulation down to that place as humanly possible, because it's so far away from the heart and where it's like the main pumping mechanism, the diaphragm. And so the lymphatic drainage massage would be something that we do regularly, working back behind the knee, working in the inguinal region, working in the abdomen, working up in the clavicles and the shoulders and the armpits and the neck and the face, and just getting that whole system circulating. So thinking of the injury that you're experiencing all the way down here or wherever, it's not just a local phenomenon, it's a global phenomenon. If you can get the whole entire body recruited to be able to heal that space, you're going to have dramatically more effective and expedited healing process than if you just myopically focused on that one spot.
Absolutely. And now with you talk about, taking care of the full body. Is there things that athletes, trainers, organizations can do with their athletes to help prevent some of these things? I feel like when you look at the average day for an athlete, be it whatever sport, football, soccer, hockey, there is a lot of downtime inactivity between arriving at a stadium or arriving at a training facility to getting on the field and actually playing or training, what have you. Is there, taking some of these modalities, some of these things that you've learned through Aaron's recovery process, do you feel like there's gaps in coverage where, athletes could be doing these prior to training or game and post that could severely, impact or prevent some of these easy soft tissue injuries, sprains, things that, obviously things happen, but I feel like a lot of that downtime or the not properly warming up or properly getting yourself ready for whatever you're about to embark on can affect that.
Yeah, there's like a ton of different things. And one of the biggest things is like in the downtime, most people, since they have been in kindergarten, spend most of their time kind of like hunched over, collapsing forward, sitting in chairs. They're backing up just the waste management system of the body. It's like I mentioned, like the lymphatic system. The lymphatic glands that are circulating all of that lymph are placed in locations of a high volume of movement. So back behind the knees, back in the, like I already mentioned, in the groin area, in the abdomen, up in the shoulders. And so those places are actually that system is structured to be governed by movement. And so if a person can just implement a little bit more like walking throughout the day, that's going to be a really big thing. If they can get themselves down on the ground with some level of regularity, that's an incredibly supportive thing. So if you're just sitting on the chair, it's like you're missing time. There's nothing wrong with sitting on a chair, like it's completely fine. But you are missing opportunities that you could be rehydrating connective tissue and creating some spaciousness and traction and just like opening up space for the joints to be able to heal themselves more effectively. Also, you're creating a more effective neuromuscular connection because you're just activating the system. Having your legs, so if you're spending some time on the ground throughout the day, that would be something that I would highly recommend. Put yourself in a 90-90 position, put yourself in a cross-legged position, put yourself in a straddle position, eat your breakfast down on the ground, get yourself a floor cushion, get yourself a comfy rug, just anything, put a yoga mat down on the ground, throw a foam roller down on the ground, anything that brings your body from up here to all the way down there is going to really add up, and it's going to be incredibly instrumental in the longevity of your body. Fall risk is the number one leading reason for elderly needing assisted living. They just can't get up off the freaking ground. And that has nothing to do with it being a human. That's purely a product of a misaligned culture. And something as simple as that, it's not just the point of like, oh, I'm worried that I won't be able to get off the ground. If you're a professional athlete, you probably don't care about that. But it's the compounding of all of the new tissue hydration and circulation that you'd be getting, and activation, innervation that you'd be getting just by taking yourself through those simple ranges of motion throughout the day. Get yourself into a deep squat whenever you can. If that's challenging, lift up your heels. That's going to be tractioning and decompressing the spine, opening up cerebral spinal fluid, opening up the tissue around the pelvic floor. It's so easy. Like, I think being a healthy human being is actually incredibly easy. It's just a matter of doing the basic fundamental things that humans have been doing forever that have kind of been removed from modern culture due to the convenience of technology. So those would be some simple things. Being cognizant that your eyes are neurological tissue. It's a continuation of your brain. If you are tensing your eyes all day long, staring into a phone, staring into a tablet, staring into a computer, sitting inside of a room, not getting full spectrum light on your eyes, one, it's associated to myopia, nearsightedness. Two, it's associated, or it will make your nervous system trend more towards a sympathetic kind of like executive function, get stuff done state. And so when you're in that state, you're not in a healing state. So you're not in that parasympathetic tone. You're not in that place of like, cool, I want to rest. I just want to chill. I want to digest my food. I want to menstruate. I want to like go through just like, That's what you do when you're spacing out. So when you just choose to take a walk, ideally choose to take a walk outside, get as much sun on as much of your skin as humanly possible. Choose to look up with your eyes, look up in the trees, look up in the clouds, utilize your panoramic vision. All that is going to have a massive effect on the actual tone of your whole nervous system. And then, from there, the way that you heal, or the way that you maybe stifle yourself from healing. Breathing is another really big one. Make sure that you're breathing through your nose as much as possible. Mouth breathing is great, but think of it as a buddy called Brian McKenzie who has created a thing called the gear system of breathing, which I think is kind of cool and clever. And so the mouth breathing would be like fifth gear. Like you're at the top of Mount Everest, you're just sprinting all out. You're at the very end of your means with cardio, and you're like, okay, I need to get a little extra nitrous boost of air in here. And then ideally, as soon as you possibly can, start to wind that back into fourth gear and third gear and second gear, and try to get yourself back into slow, calm nasal breathing. So you see there's been you see pictures or videos of certain athletes. I think the original one I saw was rugby players or something, but taping their mouths shut and trying to play. And so going up to your potential output that you can be able to comfortably do while still breathing through your nose, that's going to make your blood significantly more effective at actually liberating or releasing oxygen from the hemoglobin within the red blood cells. And so if you're constantly getting a ton of air, you have this air buffet all day long, and you're breathing really inefficiently, one, it makes you ugly because it causes your face to kind of collapse and dilapidate and gets all long, and it's not good for tissue health, it's not good for oral microbiome, it's not going to be activating the muscles that are supportive for actually getting the richest, fullest, highest volume breath of air. And it's also, from a blood chemistry perspective, causing your hemoglobin to be more greedy, holding on to oxygen, because you're sending the signal every time you breathe too much. You're sending the signal that we have so much air, we need to slow down and hold on tight to the amount of oxygen that we release from those red blood cells, because there's so much air here. If you slow your breath down, suddenly the chemistry of your whole entire physiology starts to shift, and you become more efficient with the release or the liberation of oxygen. So now you actually structurally need less air to have the same amount or even higher performance. And then, so when you look at that from that's just the blood perspective, that's also going to cause your nervous system to feel more calm as well. If you just, as an experiment, you exhale your air, and then you hold it. If you are having a panic attack in 10 seconds and oh my God, I need to get air, you're probably a pretty high-strung, high-anxiety person. And there's probably a deep kind of subconscious sensation of almost like maybe like threat in a way. Like I'm not that comfortable, but if you're a person that you can exhale your air, exhalation is easy for you. You can get the bottom exhale and you can hold it and you can kind of observe that sensation of air hunger coming on. And you're like, okay, cool, air hunger, great. And you can kind of sit with that and keep on pushing a little bit. That's a more robust physiology, and that's something that you could be doing anytime. So take yourself for a walk outside, extend your exhalation, play with breath holds, get as much sunlight as you possibly can, spend some time on the ground, get a pull-up bar in your house somewhere, hang off that pull-up bar, open up your intercostals, open up all the space in the shoulder girdle, decompress the spine, just like it aligns, pardon the usage of aligns, and so, the book's called Align and all that stuff, but it aligns the whole system in a way. It's like a tuning mechanism for the whole system, tractioning, opening, lengthening, allowing for perforation, circulation of blood, lymph, and all the different things. Do that as much as you can. All that stuff is free, all that stuff is basic, all that stuff is just it's like basic carnal stuff that humans have been doing forever.
It's awesome. And now you mentioned we're Mito Red Light, we're an Arizona company, and if you're familiar with the ex-Arizona Diamondback Randy Johnson from back in the day, if you are in the tunnel going to the dugout at Chase Ballpark, I think it is now in Arizona, there's actually a bar that was Randy Johnson's hanging bar. He used to hang. He used to in and out of the clubhouse. He's like 6'6" or 6'5", nice. Tall dude, would hang all the time because, like you said, he 100% believe in realigning, and it was crucial.
There's a whole book. So I mean, my book Align Method has a whole chapter about the value of that, but I'm referencing a lot another book called Shoulder Pain. That is from an orthopedic surgeon that found that 99%, from what he suggested in the book, 99% of the patients that he was seeing that he would potentially see and do a surgery for some version of shoulder impingement syndrome, they were completely healed of the pain and recovery of range of motion just through going through a pretty simple hanging protocol, which I break down in the Align Method online program in the book and all that stuff. And just generally, it's not that complicated, just go hang. And then there's a bunch of different corrective exercises you can do on top of that, mostly using resistance bands. It's like super simple stuff. It's like turning on the muscles that have been inhibited from a lifetime of forward head posture, hyperkyphosis, kind of just like forward collapse. Activating those muscles that have been inhibited, opening the muscles that have been hypertonic or overactivated, and then providing that traction through spine, ribs, and shoulder girdle through a simple passive hang. You can also work active, passive, back and forth, something like that. It just cleans up. It's like a shotgun to clean up so many systems so efficiently and so free. I think that stuff like that is really invaluable. I think we're waiting for this super amazing technological panacea for all the things. I think the foundation for everything is pretty much the free stuff. Once you establish the free stuff, then and only then do we build up and say, cool, we're squeezing all the juice we can out of the baseline nature fruit. Once you do that, now it's great, now let's stack red light on that. Great, now let's stack PMF on that. Great, let's stack radio frequency on that. Great, let's stack E-stim on top of that. Great, let's do all of the weird stuff that's going to get you that extra 5%. But the 95% of it is really just living a more holistic lifestyle. Mm-hmm. And then if you're a professional athlete or just a person that wants to get more out of themselves, then I think we can add on the technological kind of hacks that are incredibly effective. But if you're not getting good sleep, if you don't have decent relationships, if you're not generally motivated to train in the first place, it's going to be really hard to implement some type of device or something like that that's going to really make the biggest difference. And devices also can be supportive to get a person up to general cellular function, to have the motivation to take your ass outside.
Yeah. No.
So they can be a good lever to be okay, this gets you into doing the basic fundamental, just being a healthy human stuff. So I think that can be a very helpful thing. And if someone is, they're stuck in a domesticated situation where you're inside an office, you're in a high rise, you're in a penthouse all day, something like that, then I think tools are really valuable as well. But ideally, if a person wants to get the most out of themselves, I think it's always going to be nature is the foundation.
Absolutely. And so to kind of segment and wrap this up, so you talk about that extra 5% from technology, obviously red light being one of them, but if you had to what's your top 3, 4, 5 kind of like that extra 5% devices, modalities that people can easily utilize that are like, low hanging, like here are easy things that you can incorporate into your already existing routine.
I think honestly, obviously it's convenient that I'm saying this because, obviously what we're here, for Mito red light, but I think red light's awesome. Like I think red light is something that I would put, I don't know if I would put it as the top one, but I would definitely put it as like one of the top ones. I don't know which the top one would be really like, what are you seeking? So first we'd have to say definitively, like, what is your exact goal? And then we could have a top thing for that. But as a general thing, like I have like my travel bag here, which maybe we can, take some of the stuff out or whatever. But something that's like a non-negotiable for me is bringing, a travel red light. If I'm ever in a hotel room, obviously there's all of the benefits of like the collagen synthesis and the fibroblasts and, all the different things that it does for skin health and eye health and all the different stuff. I also really just like it to have as like a night light. And so that's like, light is one of the most important signalers for what's happening in your physiology. So if you are in a hotel room and you're being bombarded by all sorts of non-native electromagnetic frequencies from all of the different things, and you're probably sleeping in a bed that's just filled, like if you look behind the bed of a hotel, it's just filled with every freaking wire, and it's just right up against your brain. It's not a good idea. Unplug that. Yeah. I think it's a really wise suggestion, probably annoying for the house cleaners. That's what I do. I think it's a great idea. I've actually had a building biologist, they call them, come to my place in when I was living in Santa Monica, and they have all these measurement devices to be able to measure the frequencies that are coming off of all the different electronics in your house. And the difference between when it was just like an alarm clock or something, a light I think was plugged into the back of the wall to not plugged in. His instrumentation just goes like haywire crazy right near where my head's in. As soon as you unplug the light from the wall, boom, it like goes down to flatline. And so something as simple as that, like we're only picking up such a small percentage of the actual visual spectrum, so what we think that we see, it's a very small percentage of actually like the frequencies that are in the world. There's so much electromagnetic information around us all the time that's augmenting and affecting the way that we feel, and the way that our physiology produces itself. And so something as simple as paying attention to the lighting in your room, that's going to be the difference between being able to produce adequate melatonin and be able to put yourself into a down-regulated, calm, restful state before bed, or being in a hotel room like we're in right now and having all these blue lights on and also flickering blue lights, which are irritating to your nervous system, and having that and then looking into your phone probably before you go to bed, and then just lights out. Like that would never in a million years happen in nature unless it was like some solar eclipse or something was happening, like a once in a lifetime experience. Like your physiology is not structured to go full blasting flickering blue light to suddenly just, okay, lights out, sleep. Like your physiology is not ready to go to sleep. And so for me, this little mofo is something that I literally bring every trip that I ever travel. Like this would be the most important thing that I bring on a traveling trip. I also like blue light blocking glasses and other stuff, but light is something I think is an incredibly valuable variable that is not being paid enough attention to in professional sports. So that would be something that I think is incredibly important. And I think PMF has really interesting effects. I think blood flow restriction is a really interesting thing as well, particularly if there's injury. Other technologies. I think shockwave is something that's kind of interesting, coming from like an acoustic spectrum. It's supportive with angiogenesis, so that's the production of new blood vessels. So if you have like scar tissue, or it's also supportive of like erectile dysfunction as well, and it works for women as well if there's any type of like sexual dysfunction, helpful with sensitivity. So it's like it brings more blood flow to places. So shockwave therapy I think is a really interesting modality. There's probably a lot of different ones, but really it just comes down to like what are you specifically desiring. But as like a baseline, truly, honestly, I find red light therapy to be something that's like a very low barrier to entry that has very high yield effects. So that would be something that I would consider to be very valuable for sure.
Awesome. And yeah, we do. Even the when I joined Mito right over a year ago, our founder and CEO, first thing he gave me was a book light. And I was like,
oh yeah, it's genius.
And I, you didn't connect the dots right away as, you're still learning about red light therapy and things. And then to realize you can't just go from light to darkness, especially bad light to darkness.
Yeah.
And it has been so integral in even, I'm, browsing a book or whatnot at night, just reading under the red light, it drastically changes your ability to actually go to sleep.
It's huge.
And so, even just using your mobile device to turn on to create that.
Yeah, I walk around the hotel and I'll be be I'm in a cave, I'm like a monk in a cave and I'm like looking at, whatever I'm doing. If I go to the bathroom, I'll set this guy up in the corner, I'll do that. I know that's not what it's supposed to be used for, but it's one of the things that I find incredibly valuable about it.
And something I've noticed, the first thing when you start using red light is sleep, especially if you do red light before bed. Mm-hmm. I've noticed that the sleep is the first thing that you're like, oh, I slept deeper, or my dreams are a little more vivid. It seems to be one of those first early indicators of okay, maybe red light has merit to my routine. I've been missing something, so I appreciate the time. It's awesome to have you here and talk more. You can check out Aaron's website, the Align Method, the Align Podcast.
Yeah, the website's Align Podcast. If people are interested there's a 6-week program. The first week is free. That's alignpodcast.com/AMP, and that goes through a movement assessment and then some some of the stuff we talked about today, but specific fundamentals on movement and mobility. So that's alignpodcast.com/AMP, and then podcast, Align Podcast, books, Align Method. So, I'm stoked to get to spend time with you.
Aaron Alexander, and for all your red light needs, obviously MitoRedlight.com is the place to go. Thanks for watching. Have a great day.
Word up. Thank you, Doug.
Dude, that was awesome.